Something's gone very wrong with Reddit. Reddit used to be a site for regular people to post their views and discuss whatever came to mind. It was actually called the Wild West of the internet, but now Reddit's a place where 6% of the posts made are deleted. It's a place where 92 of the top 500 subreddits are controlled by just 5 people. And now it's a place where propaganda is normal. This is something which is only going to grow, and it's not just bad for Reddit or social media, but also for society, which is why, in this video, I want to talk about the rotten influence of companies, governments, and power-hungry mobs that is plaguing Reddit. And this isn't just my opinion, it was actually what one of the Reddit co-founders warned us about. But if you dare speak about this man on Reddit, you'll have your post quickly removed from the site. It's a disgrace. I mean, it's got so bad that he's no longer considered a co-founder of Reddit, because Aaron Swartz stood against everything that Reddit is today. He was a man driven by the belief that information was the most valuable of currencies, a form of wealth that no one should be deprived of. He was a tireless advocate for a free and open internet, campaigning to prevent the Stop Online Privacy Act, a bill introduced to Congress that would have effectively legalized censorship on the internet.
Right, is this classic guarantee of free speech that however crazy your ideas are, however weird your thoughts are, even if you just want to say something you don't even believe but just think is interesting, that's protected for the most part. Whether you're going after the government, whether you're releasing documents that they have tried to keep secret, whether you're telling a reporter about malfeasance that's gone on, whether you're just making a really outrageous piece of art. The government can't stop any of that. We have the right as American citizens to have this sort of free and open communication, to share what we think, what we feel, what we've created. And I think that's a huge part of our culture, right? The sort of openness we have, the comfortableness we have with each other. A lot of that traces back to the First Amendment. And on the internet, I think the First Amendment takes on an even more important role. Because if you think about how computers work, they're not like people. They don't understand what it is they're saying, right? They just take a bunch of text from over here and paste it over there. They're just big copying machines. I mean, that's what they do. They copy things from one place to another. And so laws about the content of speech, which traditionally have been prohibited by the First Amendment, they're almost impossible to execute on a computer, right? A computer can't look at this and say, is this offensive? A computer can't look at something and say, does this upset the government? It's not a person. There's just no way for it to know that. And so if you have laws saying that kind of speech is illegal, it makes it impossible for the internet to work, right? Every point along the system, there's something being copied. The little router you have in your house copies it to a thing down the street, copies it to a big building somewhere. Like, dozens of copies are made just in the most inconsequential task. And if every time the computer has to stop and say, is this illegal? The internet would fall apart. It would just be impossible to do.
Tragically, a year after this video, Aaron committed suicide after investigations from federal prosecutors. And with his death marked the decline of Reddit's position on free speech, to the point where the former Reddit CEO, Ellen Powell, claimed that Reddit was no longer a platform for free speech, and coincidentally, it was also around this time that we saw Reddit being used as a tool to influence public opinion. The first signs of this came about in 2015, when Forbes highlighted that Reddit was being manipulated by big finance. In the article, Forbes details how easy it is to manipulate Reddit, where they claim, fake comments and fake conversations being hard to spot, especially when they're made by specialist agencies, make shilling big business. Nowhere is this more apparent than on Reddit, being the world's 22nd most popular website and the US's 7th. Makes it a popular target because of the hundreds of millions of eyeballs it attracts every month.
I have, for the past 6, maybe 7 months, been actively manipulating what you all see and hear in the news. Specifically, what I've been studying is a website called Reddit, and I wrote a computer program. Every 2 minutes, goes to reddit.com, gets the most recent post, and randomly, without looking at the title, I upvote it or I downvote it. The results are pretty astounding. If I were to upvote something initially, the final score, on average, is quite a bit higher than the average score for any post. If I downvote something initially, then the average score is much, much lower than if I would have done nothing at all. Again, this is just one small nudge, one tiny push, and I can change what happens online.
It only takes 3 or 4 or 5 votes to have a sizable impact. And so if you can control 3 or 5 votes, that is, if you have 5 people working in some firm, then that can do a lot of work.
The potential of this is insane. If your average Joe can just buy upvotes, mass downvote any negative opinion, and convince everyone else that this is what other people think is good, you can subconsciously change people's perception. And this example wasn't just a one-off, it's a legitimate process used by giant corporations and politicians. It's basically a subtle but effective form of advertising, or to be honest, it's not really advertising, it's more like effective propaganda.
Basically what I did was, I wrote an article, and then I made a website with the domain name of org-html, you want to show them?
Yeah.
org-html.info, and what I would do is I would make a...
too dark. Yeah,
What?
you can see that.
Yeah, and what I would do is I would make a subdomain on it of whatever website I wanted. So nbc5 would be the subdomain, so it would say .org, or you know.
So people would see nbc.org
And then some
dash
random html.info, and most people aren't familiar with the internet enough to notice that there's something off there. So
Yeah.
I wrote a fake article, posted it on my subdomain that looked like NBC, and then I put it on Reddit, our trees, and
So that's the marijuana subreddit.
yeah,
And then everyone believed it.
and I pushed it to the top. Everyone was believing it. Yeah, High Times wrote an article about it, and I actually made the article as ridiculous as I could.
Oh yeah.
It was
So you put in the article that you were dating pop star Meghan Trainor, and that you were the dean or something from a Sydney University. And
I was a scientist researcher from University of Sydney.
can you Google this? See if you can Google it real quickly and pull it up. And then so basically, I'll try and recap what you were saying, that you made a subdomain so that appears before the actual website. And did you find it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could probably just pull up a better screenshot of this, but
Here, let me go to this is the article where they rewrote.
they basically said we were duped.
Yeah, this is, and they linked to this article.
What is it? Did they say this was the story of the year?
Yeah.
Wow.
This just highlights, you really can't trust the popular opinions in the media if they're claiming that this article is the story of the year. I mean, it's just so crazy, but it makes you realize, how much information do we consume that is just complete lies? You know, Reddit is just at the epicenter of this, ranging from fake stories to literal propaganda. I mean, this article was just a one-off that got caught out because it was so ridiculous, but if you were more subtle, you could slip this by without anyone knowing. It's just too easy, and it explains why when you go to a subreddit like Our Politics, you could be reading stuff that is literally meant to manipulate you. And not just could, this has been done so many times. I've mentioned before, Hillary Clinton was infamous for this strategy. Hillary Clinton received more money from the arms and weapons industry than any other candidate in history. But every time this was posted to Our Politics, it was instantly downvoted to oblivion. This was blatant manipulation by the Clinton campaign monitoring Reddit.
Man, it's scary when I go on Reddit, for instance, and they've basically purged 90% of any pro-Trump point of view.
Really?
It's gone, man. I pull up Reddit, and what do I get? It's all lefty commentary. If you go to like r/politics, which has, I think, 5 to 6 million subs, they use left-wing activist websites as news sources. So it's not a place for real political discussion. It's a place to get your biases confirmed.
And this issue is spreading across all social media. When the algorithm continually shows you news and opinions from only one source of information, you will end up believing it. The ease at which you can do this on Reddit is incredibly frightening, but it gets way, way worse.
An idiot. And if you're only getting one side of it, your view of the world is just totally...
Reddit used to be like the Wild West, right? It was pretty wild until like 2016. There's very little moderating.
Reddit is so incredibly easy to manipulate and control, ridiculously easy, that, I remember, man, what year it was? Maybe 2015. Political operatives were seeking ways to prop up politicians, manipulating Reddit's algorithms because users have direct control of it. I'll just tell you, it's ridiculously easy to do, like insanely easy. They've since made it more difficult, but one person with 10 cell phones, and you could own the front page of Reddit very, very easily.
That's crazy.
Since then, we've seen accusations of, and I think it's fair to say, in my experience, I know that this, tends to exist, sock puppetry, when someone runs multiple accounts pretending to be different people to create the perception of consensus.
Yes.
And this is facilitated by the admins of Reddit. The admins of Reddit will falsely ban subreddits under the guise of breaking some arbitrary rules in a pointless and pathetic attempt to justify the ban. Although they weren't always this trigger happy. There was actually a time when they would only close a community if it brought unwanted media scrutiny and bad PR to the whole website. The earliest example of this was the Jailbait subreddit, which featured photographs of what many argued was distasteful at best and borderline illegal at worst. But Reddit allowed this community to thrive, only until it was noticed by CNN's Anderson Cooper, which then brought a ton of negative attention to the website.
Reddit. One was called Jailbait, and it featured sexually suggestive photographs of teenagers, images that bordered on child pornography. We reported on it last year. A couple of weeks later, Reddit shut down the Jailbait forum. Well, there were others that rivaled its creepiness. One featured pictures of dead children, another was called Rape Jokes. You get the idea. Pretty vile stuff.
Reddit then came out with a statement after banning the subreddit. In this case, Reddit was pretty transparent about the ban. But not long after came co-founder Spez's rise to power, as he was announced CEO of the company in 2015. Spez's first change to Reddit was the introduction of the quarantine, which restricted features in certain communities and forced users to manually opt into viewing them. Spez did this to discredit subreddits that produced what he saw as distasteful content that didn't necessarily break the site's rules. Then came Lego Yoda, a meme subreddit that occasionally got a bit edgy, which harbored no hate or personal information, but it was nevertheless banned for violent content. But that might have been because Yoda's owned by Disney, and Disney's owned by China, and China owns Reddit, but I'll get onto China a bit later. Then came the political censorship, with news articles repeating Joe Biden's statements that we can only re-elect Donald Trump, then posts as trivial as, you guys are some serious libs, even my lib friends aren't as snowflakey as this, all got banned. And then the subreddit dedicated to the president called The Donald was also banned. But Spez wouldn't just stop there. The CEO of Reddit literally went into the database to change comments that he didn't like.
So this is the craziest thing, the CEO of Reddit manipulated in the database someone's comment who was a Trump supporter. This is like, could you imagine? The CEO did this.
They edited it?
He went into the database, the hard database for someone's comment, and changed what they said.
What?
Yeah, and he apologized for it, saying, I got angry. Someone called him a pedo.
But this process of ugly censorship wouldn't be anywhere near as effective if not for Reddit's moderators. They do most of the legwork on Reddit. They're unpaid volunteers, though they're more like teachers' pets than charity workers. Moderators set up and enforce their own rules in addition to the rules set by the employees. Why do this for free? Because of the power this position grants them. These moderators are free to exclude and expel anyone they like for any reason or no reason at all, and this often results in abuse of these powers, which is allowed, if not encouraged, by Reddit employees. Why? Because in exchange for getting to play the tyrant, the volunteers enforce Reddit's policy for free, and protect the platform by removing any content that might cause trouble on the website. The employees have literally outsourced most of the website's management to these volunteers in exchange not for money, but for the perception of power. As their only compensation, moderators are free to flex their privileges over regular users by threatening unwarranted bans and following through with it even if a user has broken no rules. These moderators have weaseled their way up to positions of power, exerting this power over those who give political opinions they don't like. But in theory, Reddit's moderator guidelines require that volunteers don't abuse this power. For example, they're supposed to take appeals seriously, but these guidelines are neither followed by the volunteers nor by the employees, and are as irrelevant as Reddit's content policy. This is why Reddit has become so cringy and boring, because most major posts on the biggest subreddits have been artificially inflated and narrowly filtered through by some power-hungry mod. And just from personal experience on the site, I'll go on rRule for example and just scroll through, and it's always the same opinions, the same cliche political points using these bogus websites for their partisan claims. It never stops. But the worst aspect of this is Reddit's engagements with China, wherein their government is making deals with Reddit to censor content they don't like.
Chinese tech giant Tencent is investing a whopping $150 million in Reddit. Tencent is headed by Ma Hua-tung, also known as Pony Ma, who's apparently trying to figure out exactly why offering to invest $150 million in Reddit has sparked such a torrent of fury. Reddit users are afraid that their beloved platform, known for uncensored free speech, is going to get censored to meet the demands of the Chinese Communist Party. See, Tencent has a history of censoring things the CCP doesn't like. Its Chinese platforms QQ and WeChat are both heavily censored, and they work with Chinese authorities to give them access to user data.
Maybe that's why Reddit mods are removing posts about Chinese data collection on TikTok. Maybe that's why Reddit is censoring content critical of China, with any post supporting pro-Hong Kong movements being removed. Maybe that's why blatant propaganda makes the front page of Reddit. And maybe, just maybe, that's why Reddit has become so terrible.
So yeah, it's true. Both the government and private companies can censor stuff. But private companies are a little bit scarier because they have no constitution to answer to. They're not elected, really. Right? They don't have constituents or voters. All of the protections we've built up to protect against government tyranny don't exist for corporate tyranny. And so, you know, people experience this in their job. You can get fired for doing all sorts of things that are constitutionally protected, like having a bumper sticker on your car. But what we're starting to experience that is in these privately owned spaces that we live in. You know, I think we first saw this in the 90s with malls, right? As malls became the cool place for kids to hang out, all of these freedoms that we had against the government, we lost in the mall because the mall was a private company that could throw people out for saying the wrong thing or wearing the wrong shirt. Now, Facebook has kind of become the mall. It's where everyone hangs out. And so the private company that owns Facebook can tell you, oh, don't use those kinds of words, don't use those sorts of pictures, don't talk with those people. All of these constitutional rights that we take for granted are now run by a private company that doesn't have to answer to the Constitution. So what should you be worried about? I think one is the internet going to stay free? Are private companies going to censor which websites I can visit or charge more for certain websites? Is the government going to censor which websites I can visit, force us to not visit certain websites? And when I visit these websites, are they going to constrain what I can say, to only let me say certain types of things or steer me to certain kinds of pages? All of those are battles that we've won so far, and we've been very lucky to win them. But we could quite easily lose, and so we need to stay vigilant.
There is no way to explain Reddit's fall from grace, other than to highlight the souring of its original freedom-loving roots. The association of Reddit with censorship is no accident of publicity. They're both a means to an end to a place of definitions. If Aaron Swartz could see the company he founded today, I think he'd be disgusted beyond belief at the censorship and corruption of his beloved site. And this is why Reddit is now just another boring and rotten social media site.
I was born, we're supposed to have free speech, but we sold our rights away to the land of censorship.